Good evening, everyone. My name is Shelley, and I'm the managing editor of Chapbooks at the Soapbox, and I'm honored to be doing the introduction for the launch party for Throat on Fire by Nichole Acosta. I'm very excited to be a part of this event because I was truly captured by Throat on Fire, and I'm truly honored to be part of its release here today as its editor. Before we begin the launch, we would like to acknowledge that although we are gathering in a virtual space, the Soapbox Press rests on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We encourage you to learn the history of the land you are currently on as we reflect on the past and acknowledge the changes that can be made going forward in the process of truth and reconciliation. We would also like to acknowledge that we are living through a time of great change. We stand in solidarity with the Black community and everyone doing their part to fight inequality, systemic racism, and anti-Blackness and injustice. As we take the time to do the work internally and plan actionable steps for the Soapbox, we encourage each and every one of you joining us today to be a part of the change we see happening around us. Read widely, donate to organizations, businesses, and funds that are supporting the Black community and are working to dismantle systemic racism, sign petitions, and use your voice to stand up for what is right. One person can make a difference, and when we each do the work, we are making change inevitable. For today's book launch, I'm excited to introduce Tally Voron as she discusses Throat on Fire with Nichole. Tally is the publisher and founder of The Soapbox. Tally is driven by her passion for creative writing, love of people, and the desire to make the publishing industry a more accessible space. She completed her Bachelor of Arts with honors at the University of Toronto, majoring in English literature, and has an MA in the Literatures of has an MA through the Literatures of Modernity program at Ryerson University. In her spare time, Tally pens down prose, drinks copious amounts of coffee, laughs, spends time with her loved ones, cuddles with her cat Luna, who is a very cute cat, and enjoys making terrible puns. And of course, I cannot forget to introduce the person who has brought us all here today, Nichole. Nichole Acosta is a Brooklyn-based poet, performer, and carb counter. Her work has featured in the America's Poetry Festival of New York, Diabetics Doing Things, and This Is Not What I Ordered podcast series, and Connect, Politic, Ditto, and Light anthologies. She enjoys bridging the gaps between page and stage, identity, and perception. Throughout the event, participants are encouraged to ask questions in the chat box, which will be answered after the moderated conversation. A reminder that this event will be recorded and the recording will be made available after lunch. Unfortunately, an integration for live closed captions is not yet available for Zoom webinars. However, we will make closed captions on the recording of this event that will be available after the launch. Our sincerest apologies. Lastly, to maximize your experience, we ask that you enable speaker view in the top right-hand corner of your screen. I now turn things over to Tally to begin the launch.
Hi everyone, I'm Tally. I'm the founder and publisher of the Soapbox Press. To say that I am excited and honored to be here tonight is an absolute understatement. Thank you all for joining us this evening. It is such a treasure and a pleasure to have all of you here celebrating the launch of Throat on Fire with us on this beautiful Sunday evening. When I first read Throat on Fire, when it was submitted to us, it was an experience that is so rare, I find, when you're reading a book. When I first read through the entire manuscript, I went through the entire range of emotions. I went from laughter to crying to being truly inspired. And by the time I got to the last page, I just knew that this was a work that needed to find its way out into the world. And it is just an absolute privilege to be able to say that the Soapbox has published Throat on Fire. So thank you, Nichole, for bringing this work into the world and for allowing the Soapbox Press to be part of it. So before we launch into today's events, what you can expect from us this evening is until 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. What we will do is very shortly, we will welcome Nichole to our screens. She will do a reading of several of her poems from the collection. Afterwards, Nichole and I will be in conversation for roughly 30 minutes where we will talk about the collection, Nichole's work as a writer, and just kind of see where the conversation takes us. And after the conversation, we will open up the floor to you, our incredible audience. So again, as Shelley mentioned, what you can do is if you have any questions that come up at all, just drop them in the Q&A box and we will get to them during the last 15 minutes of the event. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Nichole.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks to the Soapbox Press team for that amazing introduction and for really accepting my work. I'm gonna just dive into the poetry here. When you wake up with your throat on fire, maybe this is your body telling you your mouth is an overcrowded waiting room. Now is not the time to hold your tongue. This next piece was inspired by a show by my incredibly awesome best friend, Lucretia Berry. It's called History Lesson. For years, I believed there were all these Europeans fighting wars and drinking teas, enslaving people and discovering things. And then some sort of big bang happened, where all the people of color just dropped out of the sky or something, because we never had a backstory, just a bunch of heavy textbooks with non-inclusive timelines, so we wrote ourselves into the margins. Public school forced me to remember a history that wasn't mine, formulas that were unfamiliar, answers that shared no ancestry with me. So when people say things like, "You don't know who that is? Shame on you, what school did you go to?" And it's another white male who did something significant in history that I've forgotten, I search for a face that I know and say the same. "You don't know who that is? Shame on you. What school did you go to?" And it's another person of color who did something significant in history that you never learned about. It is clear that we need to listen more to each other's stories if we ever want to understand the bigger picture. People of color were here the whole damn time. We are here now. We will be here always. Remember that. In the spirit of Pride Month, I like to think about everyone who leaves the parade, sort of what happens next. This is that piece. At the end of the rainbow, everyone tells you there's a pot of gold waiting, but there's just the emptiness a hateful stranger has followed you to. After all the other parts of the rainbow have broken away and you are a lone reflection of light, the darkness will try to swallow you whole. So you tuck your pride under your skin to survive. A lot of what I write is inspired by my social media feed. And I was scrolling through one day and Amber Malliard had posted, "Do not trust people who say they do not see color," all periods at the end. People who say they can't see that the complexity of my complexion is a blended artist palette of colonists and slaves, of loving v. Virginia, of sun-kissed melanin v. tanning salon v. bleached skin, of the reason to pull a trigger v. the reason to negotiate nicely, of lives that matter v. lives that don't, of the reason to be followed in shop v. the reason not to, of the reason to have hair searched at airport be the reason not to, of being told to speak English or go back to your country be never being told either of those things. If you don't see color, you don't see leaves changing and the difference of how you and I have experienced life. You don't see this poem. You don't see these people. You don't see the problem. Before we go into the Q&A, I'll do one more, also in the spirit of pride and this belief that we're not supposed to exist as different people, and we don't belong. Endangered species. The geandromorphic cardinal, butterfly, lobster, the egg-carrying male seahorse, the 8% of domesticated male sheep that mate with other males for life, even in a flock of females, the bisexual bonobos, Japanese macaques, bottlenose dolphins, fulfilling sexual pleasures and social bonds, and they say we don't occur in nature. Thanks.
Oh my goodness. I need a second. And I think your reading really highlighted the drawbacks of this virtual space, because I know if all of us were gathered here together, there would just be a round of applause. So Nichole, I clap for you on behalf of all of us here today. Oh, you're not. I'm already tearing up. Okay, no, this is dangerous. We're playing dangerous games, so we're just gonna go right into the questions. Okay, thank you for that wonderful reading. Okay, so let's get started. So what inspired this collection?
I would like to say that it took several years to kind of bring it all together. So the events politically, I've been married for almost 5 years now, so a lot of that got into it. And people watching is really a big part of it, seeing how people treat one another.
Wow, okay, I'm just curious. Talk to me about the people watching. Like, how does that translate into a poem? Is that how any of the poems in this collection started?
There's one piece in there where I think that I say I turn people into poems.
Yeah.
Not to say it to watch out to anyone, but yeah, and just sort of witness the kindness and the not so kindness every day as it happens before my eyes, and jot things down that way. And it sort of spirals into a poem, not knowing where I'm going and then coming back to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I feel like we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about writing and writing process as well, but yeah I get that. So you described this collection as one about empathy and how it has the power to change the world, and that's actually what you provided for the back cover text. Can you speak to that a bit more? And
Sure. So empathy, I think that it's more than just, feeling what someone else is feeling and then stepping away from it. Now more than ever, it's a way to start the conversation on anything that's going on in the world. If you can't empathize with it, you can't change the situation or really reflect on how you might be part of it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the poems are observing as much as they are reflecting on myself, in that if I am empathetic enough all the time.
Well, I think your collection, it speaks for itself, and the fact that you do and you capture it so incredibly well. And I think it has a phenomenal way of resonating on the page and also when you read. So a lot of this collection is also about finding your voice and not being afraid to use it. So how does poetry play into that for you?
I think that I think and dream in stanzas before I write or say anything. It is the language that I communicate best in, and then sort of have to unravel that to communicate in other languages. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess kind of going off of that, this is a question that just kind of came from that. So I'm thinking of how to phrase it. I guess sorry, I'm stumbling a little bit here. You also have a poem called For the Quiet Kids, and I wonder, would you consider yourself one of the quiet kids, even like before you write out those feelings and then put them out into the world, or was
Yes, absolutely. I think that anyone knows me personally, I'm pretty soft-spoken, which is complete opposite of Throat on Fire, maybe being me as a Gemini, but yeah, I've always been that quiet kid who on stage is a different persona, so that's a different way of writing. Probably get into the process later, but I think that I write first and then kind of put them into the box of for the page or for the stage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, we will talk about that. So Okay. Mm-mm-mm. So now let's talk a little bit about how we finally landed on the title Throat on Fire for the collection. And I guess the timing works out really well because when you submitted the collection to us, it was initially called For the Quiet Kids, which I referenced just a short minute ago. So how did that kind of evolve?
Yeah, even before For the Quiet Kids, it was Private Parts, which I don't know, for a while I was just playing with what's a cool title, you know? And um, that didn't seem to fit it right. And for the Quiet Kids, I spoke with my wife, and she was talking about for the Colored Girls how it's more of a conversation, and I don't think this one is as much a conversation as it is a personal journey, and then a reflection based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you wake up with your throat on fire, got consolidated into what is now Throat on Fire.
Yeah, and then for us, it was also really interesting because when we got your collection, we just felt like it was the opposite of quiet. Like for us, it was like loud and in your face and refusing to, wait, if I say refusing to not be seen, that's wrong. Or is that right? Do I need a double negative in there? Anyways, I think you know what I'm trying
I think I get it, yeah.
Yeah. And so we thought that calling it For the Quiet Kids, like it was too quiet for the collection itself. And so we think Throat on Fire, and even when you wake up with your throat on fire, it captures it.
Yeah.
Really, really.
Even with the cover, because that process was interesting too. Like I had no idea what Riley was going to come up with. As long as it wasn't just me being like fire coming out of my face, I was open to whatever concepts. So collaboration was key, and working with this press.
Oh, wonderful. And actually, Riley, she's here in the audience today. So shout out to Riley. But yeah, I'm glad that you bring up the cover because did you have, like, what was that like for you? Did you have any ideas of what you wanted the cover to be? And then what did you think when we sent you the concepts?
Yeah, I only had what I didn't want it to be, and that was just my face with fire. But yeah, I'm really happy on how it turned out. You know, we juggled on color scheme, and so that was it. But once I got this one, it really resonated for me somewhat like a Chinese red envelope, which has the same colors of red and yellow, and also means good luck and all those things associated for Chinese New Year. So it was a perfect fit.
I love that. And that's kind of an approach that I also love to take to covers too, where kind of when you see the one, you know it's the one. And so I think that's kind of what happened where we went through so many different colors and styles.
Yeah.
And then finally when the red came up, we're like,
yeah,
there you go.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So for fellow writers in the audience, now let's turn it over to your writing process. So what is it like? And how do you know when a manuscript is finished?
So my process is, as I said, a lot of people watching, but I don't always write a whole poem out in that moment. I'll jot some notes down on the subway when we had working subways. But a lot of the good ones come at 3 a.m. in the morning. Like I'll read some poetry before I go to bed just so my mind is in a creative space before I go to sleep. And then I'll wake up at 3 and I have to rush to my notebook because I am very forgetful. I will not remember what idea came to me. So I'll write the whole poem out at 3 a.m. most times.
Wow. Okay, I have so many thoughts, but then the first one is, then is your sleep constantly interrupted?
It is, but in a good way, I'd like to think, because whatever was on my mind is now off it and I can sleep peacefully.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I also love the idea of listening to poems or reading poems before you go to sleep to put your mind in that space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to try that.
Yeah, for sure.
Great advice. Oh, love it. And then how do you know when a manuscript is finished, or at least in this case, how did you know that the collection was done before you submitted it?
So I asked this question of a poet friend of mine, Amy Herman, a while back, because I didn't write this collection as I know it's going to be thrown on fire and these are the exact poems I want in it. So one tip that Amy gave to me was to print them all out and lay them out on the floor and sort of organize them that way, read them aloud a lot to figure out the order. And I did that so many times, pulling ones out once I didn't. And that's how I knew it was done.
Okay, I love that. And then that leads me to think, so what happens to the poems that didn't make the collection?
They're stored away. Some of them, like, I just don't like completely, they've got to go. But I like to keep a separate Google Drive. I'll look at those later. Maybe they're ideas that should turn into a totally different poem or might fit into a totally different collection. So,
yeah. Very cool. I also completely resonate with the idea of like printing everything out and laying it out on the floor. That's what we did for a number of the anthologies that we published, where like the only way to really get a sense of everything that you have is just to see it all in front of you. And then when you're able to physically move things around, it makes a world of a difference.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Do you have any writing rituals?
Besides the sleeping, reading before bed, I don't have any specifically, but I do think it's important to have a good notebook that feels good to you and a pen that feels good to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. Do you have a preferred brand or type of notebook and or pen?
The inkier the better, because it's sort of like drawing poems in a way.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Okay. And do you have any writing pet peeves, or is there anything? Well, yeah. However you choose to, what you choose to make of that question.
I'll say from a performance perspective, I hate when people apologize for like, this might not be finished, and just any sort of apology before. I don't think you should apologize for your words or what you're about to say. Just let people absorb it openly.
Yeah, I agree with that very, very much. And now also speaking of performance, so you are also a spoken word poet, and we got an incredible taste of that with your reading that you did earlier. So can you tell us a little bit about your performance work and how you even fell into spoken word poetry?
Sure. So I was about 11 years old. My English teacher, Alan Smejian, who wrote the blurb on the back, actually, we've been in touch all these years since I was 11 years old. And he's a writer in his own right, musician in his own right, and he was the caretaker of the Walt Whitman birthplace at the time. And he was having this event with a bunch of adult coffee drinking poets and just pushed me up on stage, to read this 11-year-old poem, and I fell in love with it since then. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's incredible. And then where do you typically read? Are there events or?
Now there are a lot of virtual communities, so meeting people through that has been really awesome, because I'm hearing people that I might never have met otherwise.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. And then do you typically write for the page or for the stage?
So I write a lot not knowing where it's going to end up, and then look back, and it's usually when I have a big decision to make and then like a poem wears out and I'm like, okay, I know what I've decided now. And then the lengthier ones tend to make better performance pieces, and my page ones are a lot shorter. Just the nature of it. Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, that's very cool. Okay, So many of your poems speak to crucial points in history that aren't yet widely taught. In the same way that history is whitewashed and filled with erasure, I've always found that it tends to be the same with the books that are deemed the classics or part of the canon. So who have been some of your greatest literary influences?
So when I was starting performing, I read and listened to everything Saul Williams and Mini Baraka. They're able to infuse music in a way that I'm still learning how. Was I definitely wrote down because, like I said, I'm forgetful. Recently been listening to a lot of Andrea Gibson. They are just super powerful in very long poems, which I'm trying to write more of. Lemon Anderson, Lucia, Audre Lorde. But in terms of books, must-read books, I would say read books written by and about people who look different from you, in whatever that means. I don't have any titles in particular, but they've got to be people different from you.
Yes, 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 yes. Times 1,000, times a million. Oh, and okay, sorry, I'm all over the place here. Okay, so in Throat on Fire, you have truly written some of the most poignant, powerful, and beautiful poems about love and partnership that I've had the pleasure of reading. Particularly When You Wake Up Without Her and What the Hell is Love bring tears to my eyes every time I read them. And I'm very scared that if and when you read them, I will come back on screen like a mess. So fair warning to everybody. But anyways, so I've always found that even finding a really well-written love poem, let alone writing one, is incredibly difficult and rare. So can you talk about the influence of love in your writing?
Yeah, I feel like I've been defining and redefining love my entire life, right? It's taken a lot of different shapes for me to really understand what it looks like and what it doesn't look like. And particularly with What the Hell's Love, friend Philip Giambri, also known as the Ancient Mariner, is a great storyteller in his own right. He was the one who wrote his first What the Hell is Love piece and challenged other poets to do it as well, and then had a whole showcase of all of us in our different versions of What the Hell is Love. So that's my writing prompt to all the writers listening, to try to write your own. And my wife is a huge part of the love, and before I met her, I would say that I was not a mushy person, you know, and she's changed me in more ways than one.
Oh, I love that. Can we invite you to read a couple more poems for us?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to hear Nichole, take it away.
What the hell is love? Out of all the futures I could have picked off the birthday tray, I snatched the pen. I'm destined to love writing. At 8, I hate prompts from teachers. I can't fit into their boxes. I'm too much start from my own scratching, not enough color inside the lines. I have word problems. At 10, I love Seth. I tell him to his face with the biggest Kool-Aid smile on mine. He tells me you'll get over it. At 11, I love my English teacher. He gives me a reason to write anything on any surface and makes us draw our poetic licenses to do so. I draw a stick-figure identification card and learn that I hate drawing. At 16, I love Greg, but he loves her. He's 21, she's 12. It's so backwards, so I take back all my words, all my I love yous, all my things. He still has my virginity, though. At 17, I love Xavier, but so do all the other girls who do things for him that I will not. At 18, I love any man with a creative hand. Their ability to shape the air around them amazes me, but I learned that this is admiration, not love. I love everything that I want David to be, but nothing that he is. The feeling is mutual when he realizes I will never be Jewish for him. At 19, I love Andy, but he loves anything Asian and with alcohol. At 20, I love a man with two names who never went to college, whose hands are calloused from never breathing between jobs. He says the most honest conversations are naked, and they are. At 20 and a half, I love someone who finally admits they like me, and we are a beautiful disaster for 4 years. I miss naked conversations with the man with two names. My early 20s are a blur of misdirected Cupid arrows. It's not okay, Cupid. None of us match.com. At 26, I say to myself, you know, self, you kind of sort of maybe always like girls. You just never said it out loud before. At 26 and a half, I say it out loud, but she doesn't love me back. Lust becomes lifestyle, numb becomes natural. When I finally get fucked into fragile, I muster up the courage to stop, drop, and roll out of bed and say, self, I don't know what the hell love is, but I know with every fiber of my being that this is not what it looks like. At 27, I build my walls so high around me, it is a struggle to hug anyone, even the ones I claim family. I am so unsure of the ability of my arms to hold on to anything longer than a blink anymore. I have a dozen significant others and I am single, but like Kraft cheese, I'm so vulnerable outside my package. I invest in heavy-duty bullshit detectors, deny dates, and I'm not as easily impressed anymore. I suffered too many casualties from casual sleep, and now I'm trying to celebrate that the war with my body and my heart is over. I meet a battle-scarred warrior turned mosaic, and when she speaks, I think I finally have an inkling of what love is, and she is what it looks like. I'll take a breath after that one. So with our wedding, my wife is a Haitian immigrant, and we had to go before immigration officers and have a terrible experience of that, and it made me think about waking up without her and what that might look like. When you wake up without her, everything tastes like gray, sounds like paper cut, looks like excuse for air freshener, feels like empty. When you wake up beside her, everything tastes like periodic table, sounds like uncaged bird, looks like crescent moon, feels like bass. This one is a tribute to her parents, because without them, I wouldn't have the love of my life. Meeting the parents. I've met them in digitized reconstructions of memories past. They look happy and hard-souled. I've met them in my wife's shoulder blades, their legacy heavy on her back. She carries mommy's cooking in her hands, daddy's generosity in her heart. I've met them in the retelling of her dreams, in the Creole of her speak, in the way she hugs, questions government, takes vacations in bookstores. I've met them in her laughter, in her tears, in her writing, and how loudly she loves, like they did. And these last two were totally inspired by my niece and nephew, whose joy brings me joy every time they're singing and dancing over video chat, and they give the best hugs. And my niece Naya, she wears a lot of unicorn shirts, and I have a tattoo unicorn also meaning great blood sugars. Is called a unicorn, and I've been connected to this animal, this mystical animal, in a lot of ways. So this produced this poem called Cloud Watching. When little girls believe in unicorns, at a time like now, I envy their imagination. I want to bottle their firefly laughter in mason jars. A laughing child is the sweetest sound I've ever known. I want to gift my wife that sound one day when we can watch reruns of the revolution of the day that love won. And this last piece, inspired by my nephew, Nate, is very much about the present and maybe a lot of thoughts, those 3 a.m. thoughts in the era of COVID. Not in the book, so perhaps another collection. 3 a.m. thoughts in the era of COVID. AC and BC will no longer mean after and before Christ. Why do we frame time with one religion? What if my heaven is my grandmother's hug? When do we stop pouring coffee on the wound of sleepless nights? How do we vote? There is never a warning about the word trigger in trigger warning. Who are the owls waiting for? Why does dead hair grow like a live plant? What inspires you? When's the wedding? What will Halloween look like? I'm thinking about the toy my nephew got last Christmas, and its nonstop sirens and lights and spinning, and how the world outside looks a lot like that. All batteries run out eventually. Hold on. Thanks.
Okay, I had to pull myself together to come back on screen. So again, a round of applause for you, Nichole. Thank you for gifting us with 2 readings this evening.
Thank you.
The pleasure is, I speak on behalf of everyone. I'm sure everyone agrees with me, it's all ours, so thank you.
Thank you.
So 2 final questions before we turn it over to all of our audience. So what do you want readers of Throat on Fire to take from the collection?
That's a tough question. I think whatever you want to take from it. When I step away from any sort of painting at a gallery, I might take something away from it totally different than the next person. So whatever you take from it, I'd love the feedback.
Yeah, so actually, well, we can open that up to all of our audience members here today. If you'd like to share what you got from listening to Nichole's poems, drop them in the Q&A box and we will read them out here this evening. And the final question that I have is, are you working on anything now? And what's next for you in your writing?
Again, not thinking holistically as like, this is the next collection of blue or whatever. Just going to keep writing as often as possible and reading as often as possible, and whatever that turns into is whatever it turns into. Yeah, right, without knowing where you're going and go back.
Yeah, well, wherever that journey takes you, I'm excited to see what it brings forward. And so with that, I will turn things over to our audience. So we already got a couple of questions. So from Veranda McKinney, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounce anybody's names. The world has to know, favorite poem from the entire collection and favorite to have written / performed. So let's start with favorite poem from the collection.
That's gotta be What the Hell's Love, because it makes me reflect all the time. I was in another virtual open mic recently where they talked about if you're writing from the scar or you're writing from the wound. So I have been thinking a lot about that. And in that piece, when I wrote it, I think I was writing from the wound, and in revision, I was writing from the scar. It's just to say, as like you've healed already, and now taking a real look at how it panned out in totality.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's powerful. I really like that. Okay, and then favorite poem to have written or performed. So I think that can even be beyond this collection.
I think collectively, performance-wise, I love to collaborate with musicians and other poets. So those have been my favorite, because I always say that collaboration is a magical thing. Where two people come together and create something completely new. So those have been my favorite.
Okay. From Cynthia Manick. How much does your vision or imagination of the future, world, or personal play a role in your poetry? Hashtag Gemini's Rock.
I think the poetry is the vision, and it's sort of cyclical, right? Poetry is the vision is the poetry. And I hope that a lot of the visions come to reality. And some of them are, looking at the not so great parts of humanity and how people have treated each other. So I hope those things no longer become a part of that reality.
Yeah. From David Alberton. I second Tally's point that we would all be clapping after the amazing reading. Yes. Do you write prose as well? And if so, how do you approach it / feel about it in relation to poetry?
I won't say that I have. I've always written in a pretty free form. Yeah, the times that I have written in a more structured form, they've been okay, but I can get to a haiku and that's about it. So, I'll leave the prose for the prose folks.
That's great. Yeah, as my bio said, I do like puns. So, okay, from Serena Reisner. Will you be doing any collabs with other artists?
Hopefully soon. If you like this reading, I hope that this will turn into an audiobook with a musician friend of mine, and we'll see what comes out of that. And definitely more projects with other artists who I have no idea who they are yet, but I might meet them in more virtual spaces.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought up the audiobook because I cannot wait to make that happen.
Sweet.
Okay, also from Serena. Do you have any advice for young poets starting out?
Listen to more poets. I feel like as a super young poet, I might have been too cocky and just gotten up on the mic and might have left after my 3 minutes were up and like, I'm so great and I'm getting out of here, but that's not the way to go. That's not the way to grow or to learn. And I have grown. My writing is totally different than it was years ago because I have listened to other writers to really mold my craft and continue to make it better.
Excellent advice. I second that. From NYK Choi. Your work is very powerful. What advice would you give young people who want to write but are discouraged by their family? How does one find the courage to move forward?
All right, so I don't know if you could see this tattoo, but it's a pen with little blood drip and family is spelled out. But I got it because I believe that family is more than just your blood. It's the people that you write into your life. So I don't think it's in your best interest to always do whatever your family wants you to do. There may be some restrictions to that in a lot of ways. You might be too young to be on your own, but and a lot of other things. But you've got to live with you at the end of the day, right? So you've got to do what makes you happy. Yeah.
Excellent answer. I love writing family into your life, and beautiful tattoo.
Thanks.
From Lucretia Berry. A writer, dead or alive, you'd have Van Leeuwen's ice cream with, and why?
So Barry is the singer I mentioned earlier that inspired the history lesson. And I recently sent her a whole bunch of Van Leeuwen vegan ice cream for her birthday. So who would I ice cream with that are alive? That's a really tough one. Because I think that not all artists are the same as you expect them to be. And I want to leave that magic and expect them all to be as amazing as their work is. Yeah, so I don't put anybody on a pedestal or have ice cream with them and then they turn out to be not so nice of a person. Hoping that they would, but yeah, I don't want to ruin that I love their work. So, yeah, ice cream for myself.
That's also more ice cream.
Yes.
Okay, from Mega Sood. Thanks, Nichole, for the wonderful reading. I would like to know how long did it take for you to compile the manuscript and any learning or lesson you want to share about your publication process.
Sure. So a big shout out to Mega Sood because I know she's been published in her own right in a lot of places recently. So super congrats to her. But I think the bulk of it took the past 2 or 3 years. But like what the hell is love? Obviously it took much longer. Yeah. What was the second part of that question?
Just if there's any learning or lesson you want to share about your publication process.
Find the right home for your work. I can't say enough about how great this team was working on this book. We were really collaborative on everything from the cover to the editing and making sure that it was really what I wanted and what they wanted as a press, and that they, that I'm sitting on a shelf with other writers that I really enjoy and that inspire me. I wouldn't have given this over to a press that, is totally doing things that I don't agree with at all. So finding the right home is super important.
That means so much to me as well. So thank you, Nichole. I'm really glad that you feel that way. Another question from NYK Choi. Are you ever afraid to hit the send button? How do you overcome self-doubt?
All right, so self-doubt is a big thing that I've struggled with a lot. I would say I met JP Howard, who hosts this monthly open mic, and she was really instrumental in telling me to, keep sending because your work will find a home. It deserves a home, needs a home. So she pushed me to do that. So to have people around you that push you as well, I think that's super important. But in thinking of this entire pen to publish process conference, I wrote a really short piece called Trust Exercise that's totally about self-doubt and overcoming it. I can read that one.
Okay, sure. And then we have 12 questions I would love for us to get to. So we're going to do a question power round after you read.
Cool. It's like 30 seconds. Called Trust Exercise. Every time I send a poem or a full collection of them from my rib cage to another human being, I question if they will return words to sender, chewed up and spit up by the dog, tear off the label that made them mine, never read it at all, pretend they did, and yet somehow, millions of words are published every day by taking a leap of faith.
Oh, I love it. And how timely.
Yeah, so just take a leap of faith.
Amazing. Okay, well, are you ready for a question power round?
Okay.
Okay, Well, this is not a quick question. What is your writing process? What does it look like? From Vanessa.
Yeah, a lot of 3 a.m. writings, a lot of more writing on my phone than notebook lately, but I write in a lot in the notebook to memorize poems.
Okay. From Natalie, did you choose 3 a.m. or did your mind/body keep on waking up at 3 and you made it a ritual?
Yes, my mind and body.
Okay. From Lauren Selfridge, who inspired and supported you through the writing process?
A lot of it is my wife. I mean, she's my unofficial manager today, making sure everything in the living room is perfectly set just right, and that I ate enough, because I'm also a type 1 diabetic, so I had to make sure I got all my sugars right, and just so she has been the hugest support. But people that I've met that my work resonates with, that has been the biggest support for me.
Beautiful. From Susanna Case, I'm intrigued by the mention that you are a card counter. I think it's carb counter, right? From your bio?
Yeah.
Any poems about that in the pipeline? I don't know if it applies since it was a little misheard. Sorry, Susanna, but.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a card counter in any way. I can't play poker, or I can play a good game of spit, so I can do that. Carb counter, yeah, I've been a type 1 diabetic since my freshman year of college, and sometimes I write about that. At work, they know me as this nickname of Sugar Freedom because I say it all the time. Of how it allows me to live the rest of my life and try not to focus too much on sugar. But yeah, I might write about it more. I've written for The Mighty and been on a couple of podcasts talking about poetry and diabetes. So that's the way I deal with it, but I write less poetry about it.
Okay. From Supriya Malik. Hi, Nichole. Your words are so passionate and inspiring. With all that is going on in the world and everyone sharing things to read to educate ourselves, is there something you'd recommend? Thanks.
There are more books that I need to read. I want to read next How to Be an Anti-Racist. I've listened to the talks, and now it's time to read the book and reflect on that myself. So that's first, and then there are a ton of other reading lists you can find out there.
Wonderful. Okay, we're dealing with the crunch here, but we can do this. Okay, Becca Shalkin, when you first began writing poetry, did it ever scare you to let people into such personal thoughts and feelings? What would you recommend to people who might feel timid about writing their thoughts down on paper?
So Becca is my boss at my day job. So you want to answer this question? No, but for sure, I think you've got to get ideas down on paper and out of your head first. And it is scary. But I personally am more scared in one-on-one sort of more intimate settings like this one than I am in front of thousands. Just because, it's more vulnerable with small settings.
Makes sense. Okay. From Elise Lebel. First of all, Nichole, you are amazing. Agreed. I was curious to know, the first poem you performed on stage when you were young, do you remember what it was about?
So that was about love when I had no idea what it was. I tried to find it. It must be in a notebook somewhere, but it was my only idea about love at the time. My parents had just gotten divorced, at the time of writing that one. The only line I remember is about love being like butter spread on toast, and now I don't remember why I wrote that. But yeah, it was about love. And trying to figure out what love means after that.
I was wondering about that poem too when you mentioned you were 11 when you first wrote it. From Andrea Martineau, what are you reading right now?
I bought a bunch of chapbooks from the folks that I've met in virtual spaces, so I'm reading them. I just finished Kai Coggin's book, Incandescent. Looking at my bookshelf, finished Susanna Case's book, the Shark on the N Train. I recently got Loving Large, which was also sponsored by you guys. That one particularly interesting to my coworkers who may be joining this is a mother who raised a son with gigantism and her experiences with that journey. So I thought that would be a really interesting read.
Wonderful. And so as we're cutting it right close to the end here, I'm just going to read out one final comment, which I think is the perfect way to end off. So from Amy C, hi Tally, this is Amy, Nichole's mom. I cried just like you when I heard Nichole read What the Hell is Love. Please tell her that I'm so very proud of her and love her very much. Wish I could give her a great big hug.
Oh, wow. Now I'm gonna get all gushy.
I'm already. Thank you very much, Amy, for tuning in and for your comment.
Thanks, Mom.
To everyone whose questions we didn't answer, so sorry about that, but thank you very much for submitting them. If you would like to email them to the Soapbox and we can pass them on to Nichole, and if Nichole, if you're open to it, then we can find a way to get those questions answered, then we can definitely do that.
Sure, of course.
Okay. So Nichole, thank you so much for everything this evening. Happy book launch day. Thank you everyone for being here with us tonight to celebrate. I know many of you here tonight probably already have pre-ordered the book. The pre-orders will be in your mailbox tomorrow. If you haven't yet ordered your copy, then you can head on over to www.thesoapboxwrites.com and purchase your copy there, and you will also receive it tomorrow. And with that, I will turn things over to Shelley. Thank you, Nichole.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. On behalf of all of us here today, I would like to thank Nichole for sharing her words with us and Tally for moderating this event. Thank you to each of all of you for attending. Oh my gosh, I'm stumbling over my words. I think Amy's comment really got to me too. So thank you so much for submitting it, and thank you to all the people who submitted questions. And like Tally said, please check out They're on Fire and order your digital copy from the Soapbox website if you haven't yet. And make sure to follow both the Soapbox and Nichole on your favorite social media to keep in touch, and have a wonderful evening.